The 2025 Australian Open was thrilling, with several players showcasing their exceptional skills. Yannick Sinner, unsurprisingly, won it for the second year in a row. So, things kind of went normally. I mean, except for Impeshi Pericard getting his ass handed to him by a 38-year-old Gael Monfils, or Daniil Medvedev not making it to the second week because of a teenage sensation that is Lena Tien, or Andrei Rublev getting knocked out by João Fonseca, who wasn't up to the legal drinking age in most countries last year, or Casper Ruud's disappointing run. Things kind of went smoothly regardless. But just for fun, I want to highlight a compliment and a critique about some players at the Australian Open 2025. I will be posting a part 2 depending on how well this video does, so if your favorite player did not make it to the list, comment their names for them to be included in the next video. Now let's get to the list. Number 1, Yannick Sinner. A compliment. Sinner's serving was absolutely phenomenal, with not a single break point conceded throughout the majority of his matches. In fact, he only dropped a set to Tristan Colgate and Runa throughout the tournament. His consistency and aggression were on full display, earning him a back-to-back Australian Open title. A critique. It's hard to see any fault in Yannick Sinner's game, but for the sake of the title of this video, I'm just going to say that even though Sinner's serve is excellent as it is, his serve, according to John McEnroe, is still a work in progress. Number 2, Alexander Zverev. A compliment. If consistency was an ATP sport, Sinner would always win gold. Zverev will always be the clear favourite for silver. Zverev's determination and resilience were on full display as he reached the final, showcasing his ability to perform under pressure. Critique. Zverev's semi-final win against Novak Djokovic was aided by Djokovic's injury. Zverev has officially stated that he doesn't see himself winning a slam because he isn't good enough. Those were his words, not mine, so don't come for me. With that kind of mindset, you can now know why he has never won a slam, or why he pretty much doesn't have any chance to win a slam in the future. He didn't win the Australian Open because he simply did not think he could win it, not because of anything else. He was good, he was solid. His run to the final was relatively easy compared to let's say, Yannick Sinner, who battled through an illness during his match with Olga Runa. Zverev just had it easy to the final, and all he had to do was to really push Sinner. But he probably did not have the right strategy going in, which is why he lost. So going into the future, Zverev might want to check his mindset. Now let's go to number 3, Ben Shelton. A compliment. Big Ben got to the semi-finals of yet another major tournament. Ben's explosive power and unique serve always makes him a standout player. We also have to praise him for mitigating the threat that was Gael Monfils. Even though Gael Monfils got injured at some point during the match, he still pushed him to that injury, which is something that cannot be said for, I'm not going to mention his name, but the other American who we really thought could trouble Gael Monfils but couldn't, the one that was ranked number 4. But anyways, let's go to his critique. It is now apparent that Shelton's inexperience hinders him from closing out matches against seasoned opponents. Shelton has the guns in his arsenal to be able to beat top guys and enter a big 3 conversation with the likes of Sinner and Alcaraz. But he has to crack the top 10 lists at first. He has never even been a top 10 player, so he needs to enter that space to be included in any of these arguments. Now let's talk about Novak Djokovic. A compliment. I sincerely don't understand how a 37-year-old made it to the semi-finals of the Australian Open. when he had to face guys like Jiri Lechka and Carlos Alcaraz on his way there. What is there to say about Djokovic that already hasn't been said? He's a legend. End of discussion. A critique. I don't see another slam in Novak's future. The 25th slam will never happen for him. He had an amazing slam run. I mean, he's literally the player with the most slams in the Open era. So he can retire knowing that he overachieved. But moving on to the future, it just doesn't seem plausible that Novak Djokovic is ever going to win the slam again. Now, number 5, we have Lorenzo Sonego. A compliment. Sonego made the quarterfinals of the Australian Open this year, and I have to say that he had one of the best runs in the tournament and bowed out like a champ. His adaptability to other players' game always makes him a standout player to watch. If I had the critique for Sonego, it would be that he can be very inconsistent. He plays very well at times, and at other times he just doesn't. I expect him to do better during his quarterfinals against Shelton. Like, he really had what it took to go further, but he was outdone by the Americans' aggressive playing style. Let's just face the truth. Now, let's get to the next player, Carlos Alcaraz. Maybe this might be a little bit unorthodox based on the title of this video, but Carlos Alcaraz's run during the Australian Open 2025 was mid, to be honest. He didn't do anything impressive. I genuinely believe Jack Draper would have knocked him out had he not played 3 consecutive 5-setters before getting to Alcaraz. He got beaten by an injured Djokovic, who was a set down against him. There is pretty much nothing commendable about his Australian Open run, like nothing at all. He got through a few guys the first round, the second round, the fourth round. He had to go through Jack Draper, who pretty much had already had a very difficult run. And then the quarterfinals came and he couldn't beat a 37-year-old and injured nonetheless Novak Djokovic. That was just a very disappointing performance from Alcaraz. It may seem as though he prioritizes showing off more than actually getting things done, like more than actually winning matches. He just likes to show off. But there's pretty much nothing to compliment about his run, especially when he said something about wanting to win the Australian Open. It was just there. If I had to describe him, it would be mediocre at best at this particular Australian Open. He just didn't go in. It felt like he was going to win, but I had a very hard time believing that he could not beat Novak Djokovic. I had a very hard time believing that. The 7th player we'll be talking about is Tommy Paul. A compliment. I like that Tommy Paul can only be beaten by top 10 players. I really like that, which is more than I can say for the likes of Medvedev, Tsitsipas and Rublev. Tommy Paul is just an eye candy to watch. His style of play is very endearing to watch. He simply plays beautiful tennis. Even though he was knocked out by Zverev in the quarterfinals, he was still a solid performer throughout the competition. If I had a critique for him, I feel like Tommy Paul really needs to learn how to beat top-ranked players if he wants to be consistently a top-ranked player. He's now world number 9 at the time of this video. He won't be able to retain that spot if he fails to beat top 10 players consistently. He just needs to find a way to consistently defeat top 10 players. Our next person is Alex de Minaur. A compliment. De Minaur's exceptional athleticism made him a formidable player to go up against. Everything about his game was perfect. He was Australia's only hope because of the flop that is Nick Kyrgios and Alexei Popyrin. The only critique about him is that he cannot beat Jannik Sinner. Jannik Sinner is quite literally the bone of de Minaur's contention. It's like the bane of his existence at this point. That was literally the one hurdle for him to pass and he couldn't. So because of it, Sinner went back to back. Alex de Minaur was one of the people that actually had what it took to actually beat Sinner. So I'm actually going to cut in some slack because we're talking about Yannick Sinner here, so he gets the pass. Now let's talk about Jack Draper. I'm going to keep this short and simple. Jack Draper is an amazing player, but his body is his biggest enemy. I don't mean to be mean, excuse the pun of course, but Jack Draper has the stamina of a peeper. Now I have to be fair, he was my standout player at this year's Australian Open. He won 3 consecutive 5-setters, but let's be real, it was always going to be a challenge against Alcaraz, considering how much time he had already spent on the court. Overall, Jack Draper had an amazing tournament. It was great. He made it to the 4th round before being forced to retire over an injury he incurred. Watching Draper throughout the competition was great, all things considered. I'm just really hopeful to see what else he's going to do this year. He had an amazing run. The critique I'll have about him is he still needs to learn how to conserve energy whilst playing a tournament. If you're going to play a tournament that has 7 matches, you need to play like considering the next opponent. The Draper is the type of player that likes to take his time against opponents. He likes to really devour the match, get into it, but he needs to plan for the future. I feel like Yannick Sinner knows what it is or what it takes to really plan ahead. If he's facing this person now, he doesn't go all out with the person. He's very cool, very calm, very collected. He doesn't panic. But Jack Draper just throws everything at you and then he burns out pretty much. He runs out of fuel. So going into next match, he needs to be able to conserve his energy. Now let's talk about Olga Runa. To be honest, I did not expect Runa to do this good at the Australian Open. The Dane was largely inconsistent for a good portion of 2024. If I had any compliment for him, it would be how he stood on business till the very end. He was solid. Again, I don't have any critique for him because he got knocked out by Sinner. That was bound to happen. But he actually even took a set of Sinner. His match with Sinner was actually quite funny because of like pretty much everything that happened. Sinner took a medical timeout. Runa took a medical timeout. Even the net literally had to take a medical timeout. But all things considered, he did very well. Anyways, that will be all for today. Drop comments about this video so that I can improve, and please subscribe. Have an amazing day or night or whatever. Bye.